Hey, what's up YouTube? Lightsaber Samurai here. I'm back again for another video. Now, several weeks ago, I made a video where I highlighted 5 video games that were based on television shows, and whilst looking through my collection recently, I realized that not only did I have more video games that were based on television shows, but I also had several that were based on movies. So, without further ado, let's flip the script. Here are 5 video games that are based on major motion pictures. Let's talk about it. Alright guys, so the first game that we're going to talk about on the list came out all the way back in 1987. It is a port of an arcade game by Data East, and it came out on the original NES. And that first game we're talking about, Robocop on the NES. This one is a hybrid side-scrolling run and gun and beat 'em up, and it plays pretty well. You play as the hero. The graphics in it actually are pretty good for 1987. The animation is pretty decent, and the game scrolls really well. In this, you play through a series of levels, and usually it's kind of scrolling left and right and apprehend the bad guys, fight a boss at the end type of deal. There are sections where you also play like little mini games, if I remember correctly, where you're back at the station and you're doing target practice. This is a pretty good game, but it has one glaring issue with it, and part of it is in the level design. That's kind of a smaller issue. In some of the levels, you're kind of just like going in and out of doors, and you really don't know where to go, so it's a lot of wandering and trial and error. That is okay though. I can get past that. The major issue with this game is in it you primarily fight enemies either with your fists or you use your automatic 9mm pistol to take out enemies, but it really doesn't give you control of when you get to do that. It seems almost seemingly at random sometimes. It'll give you control of your punch, and then you're using your punch with the B button or whatever, and then randomly it'll switch to your gun, and then you can shoot enemies for however amount of time until it decides to switch back over again. And that's really annoying and really brought this game down for me in the enjoyment department. I wish that was just something you could do on your own. I wish you got to choose when you drew your pistol and when you got to fight hand in hand. Overall, it's a pretty decent game though, but that flaw really does hold it back. This game is pretty cheap despite it being an NES game and everybody drooling over NES these days, but I think even still, like on eBay and like Price Chart and things like that, you can still get it around the $10 mark, and I would say it's pretty much, I would say it's worth that if you can get past the fact that it doesn't really fully give you control. So that's number 1, Robocop. Alright, next up, we are going to the 16-bit era, and this is a Disney game. Now, in the 8 and 16-bit era, there were plenty of games that came out based off of Disney animated movies at the time, and I don't really want to highlight a bunch of those. I want to save that kind of for its own episode sometime in the future, but I wanted to talk about this one on the Genesis because this is a really nice looking and fantastic running platformer by the name of Toy Story. Maybe you heard of it. In this, you play as Woody, and there are some missions where you also play as Buzz Lightyear. It appears to loosely follow the events of the movie. There's a lot of cool stills that they have in between levels that serve as cutscenes, and basically it follows the plot of the first movie, and you'll meet all of the characters and drive the RC car and all kind of cool stuff like that. The graphics in this game look fantastic. They use those silicone graphics that you would see in games like Donkey Kong Country or Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo, and on the Genesis they look fantastic. One of the cool things that I liked about this game is as the scrolling was fantastic. The scrolling, one of the cool things it does, it shows depth by allowing you to see the sides of objects as you walk past them, and it creates a really cool 3D effect. So I felt like the controls were a little bit twitchy as far as platforming and making jumps and things, but from a technical sense, the graphics are fantastic, and I oohed and awed over the graphics. There's a couple of 3D levels. There's a Doom style level where you're kind of running around in a vending machine. You got to put all the aliens back, and then there's a kind of a racing type stage where you're outside in the RC car and you're driving through the level like that, and it scales fantastically and looks really good. And as far as I know, I don't think it is using it's using the aid of a helper chip, so that's really impressive, and that's a game that's really pushing those graphical limits on the Genesis. If you see this one, this is a fantastic one. If you like platformers like Clockwork Knight on the Saturn and things like that, this one is one that I don't think that goes for very much money. Again, this is like a $15-$20 for just the cartridge, and it's definitely worth that. If you see this one, do pick it up. It's a fantastic game. Okay, next up on the list, we're heading to the original Xbox for these next two entries, and this one here is by LucasArts and the Collective. This is Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith on the original Xbox. And this is a pretty good game. It's not as bad as most people think. You go through the events of the movie. At the time, this had come out right before the movie hit in theaters too. So it was cool to see exclusive clips from the movie that hadn't released yet and things that we hadn't seen in trailers. It follows the story of Episode 3. You're Anakin Skywalker. You also play missions as Obi-Wan Kenobi as well. And it like I said, it just showcases Anakin's fall to the dark side and everything that happened in Episode 3. This game plays as a third-person beat-em-up primarily, but the fixed camera side, I think overall the game plays kind of like it reminds me of The Force Unleashed actually, and a lot of the mechanics. You have a grip button that you'll use a lot to fend off enemies. You got your lightsaber combos. They give you some force powers, different ones depending on which Jedi you play as. You'll get lightning as Anakin, and you get like mind trick or something like that as Obi-Wan. Each of them can heal, and certain parts of the missions you'll be able to move heavy objects with the force or do super high powered jumps. One of the things that this game really showcased, and one of the things it really advertised, was the lightsaber combat in it. It was trying to get the lightsaber combat as authentic looking as they could at the time, and even Hayden Christensen had come in and worked a few combos that he wanted to do in the movie and in the game, and so that's pretty cool that you'll use some of the lightsaber sequences that Anakin uses in the movie. You'll be able to use those in the game. It's, like I said, it's pretty good. I enjoyed it. It's a pretty short game. You'll get through it in about 6 hours or so. But if you see this one, this goes for less than $10. Another thing to mention is it has a pretty decent two-player mode where it kind of plays like a fighting game. So you and a buddy can face each other, and you'll unlock more characters as you go through the story, and you'll unlock arenas and things like that. In the fighting mode, I had quite a bit of fun with that. There's also a bit of a co-op mode where you can kind of do like alternate missions. I wish they would just let you play through the game itself co-op, but unfortunately won't let you do that. But I had a blast with this game. I thought it was pretty good, and it's definitely worth the cheap price that it's going these days. So if you see Episode 3, definitely give it a shot. Alrighty, now moving on to the original PlayStation for the penultimate game on this list today, and this one was brought out by Probe and Fox Interactive. It's based on the first 3 Die Hard games, starring Bruce Willis, and this here is Die Hard Trilogy. 3 maximum adventures, 1 explosive package, and in this, as the game advertises on the cover, it's basically split up into 3 games. So Die Hard 1 is a third-person action-adventure game, a very Arcadian aspect where you go through Nakatomi Plaza, you'll rescue hostages, you'll fight bosses, collect different weapons, and take down the enemies. This one is my favorite of the 3, and I don't know, I just like the cheesy dialogue and his the kind of Bruce Willis imposter that they got in the game. He's just kind of like, get the hell out of here, like when he's rescuing people. Like, I don't know, this one was just one of my favorites growing up, and I really like this one a lot. Going on to Die Hard 2, Die Harder, this one plays like a rail shooter. And so you'll go and play out through the levels based on the game, and enemies will pop up. You have to shoot the enemies while avoiding the hostages. This one can get pretty tough, but it's cool. They've got a ton of weapon power-ups, and this one is very gory as well. This does not have gun con support, unfortunately, as this game came out before the gun con was invented. I think maybe you can use Konami's Justifier with this. Don't hold me to that. I know you can use the PlayStation mouse on this, but when I play this, I usually just use the controller on it. The third game in this kind of collection was Die Hard 3, and this one is a driving game, a racing game where you're kind of racing against the clock, flying through Chicago, and you run into these bombs to kind of stop them from detonating. This one I didn't really like that much, as it was super hard. The time they give you is very limited. You've got no room for error. If you crash, you get turned around. That's basically it. And of course, it doesn't have GPS like we're used to in games we play today, like Grand Theft Auto 5 and the like, where you can kind of see it on your map and it'll show you, you know, you can just follow the arrows or the blue lines or whatever. It kind of has an arrow that kind of points you as you go that works kind of like a compass, but that's not accurate enough to go down the specific street. It basically just tells you if you're going in the right direction or not, but you don't know if you're going down the right street or whatever the case until the time comes and your compass will snap back in the other direction to let you know you passed wherever you were supposed to go already. So that game is hard, and I don't really play that one. Overall, I dug this game a lot. I would get this just for Die Hard alone. Like I said, the third-person action-adventure game was enough to seal the deal for this for me. I picked this up $6.99, so again, another game under $10, and I think it's still going for about that now if you wanted to collect for this. If you're a PlayStation fan and you want to get this, definitely scoop this up. Alrighty, and the final game on this list, we're going back to the original Xbox on this. This one was put out by Sierra, and it came out, and I want to say around 2004 or so. This is the epic saga of Scarface, The World Is Yours, and in this you play as Tony Montana. This takes place actually after the events of the movie. Tony is attacked in his mansion like he is at the end of the movie, but this kind of takes on a what if story. In the movie, he's shot in the back by Sosa, but in this kind of explains like it's a cool what if story if he had survived, and he survives the assassination attempt on him. He's kind of hiding out in a safe house, and he has to build his empire up all the way over again. And this one is a Grand Theft Auto clone of sorts. Takes place in Miami. Like I said, the year after he was supposedly had been killed, and so you're right smack dab in the middle of the 80s. The game is fantastic. I love this game a lot. The gunplay in it feels right. It's definitely better than what you would see in Grand Theft Auto Vice City. The map itself is fairly big, and there's a lot to do in it. Besides going through the main missions and building up your empire, there's a lot of petty things you can do, like you can get small amounts of cocaine and sell them to people on the streets to get money and respect that way. Oddly enough, you can't. One of the things that I didn't really like about this game is you can't really rampage, and what I mean by that is you really can't just attack people on the streets and shoot at people and shoot up people on the streets. You can try, and you can aim him out and pull the trigger, and he'll say something like, "Oh man, I'm not a rat," or something like that, but it won't let you rampage in the streets. Actually, if you start to build a wanted level, you've got to get that down, because if you keep escalating with the police, at some point you'll get to a point where you can't get rid of your wanted level, and you just go until they finally gun you down, which is actually pretty cool, honestly, and definitely more realistic than Grand Theft Auto's 5-star wanted level. The army is after you, but you can hit that pay and spray and then everything's okay. And they go about their business like nothing happened. No, in Scarface, if you screw up like that in the game with the police, that's it. Like, you can't escape, you can't outrun the police. They will keep coming after you until they gun you down, and so you're basically just making your last stand, which I thought was cool. The soundtrack in this game is fantastic. It's got a cast of licensed music that I would love to show you here, but I don't want to get a copyright strike. But they got everything from rap to pop and new wave and everything else in between. Got some disco in there. This is a great game. And it's gone up in price a little bit, but you can still get it around $20. This is a fantastic game. One of the few games on the original Xbox that broadcasts in 720p natively. So this game looks fantastic still on my 4K TV. This is a game that you should not be without. PlayStation or Xbox. I prefer the Xbox version because I think it's the more technically superior version, and so I feel like it's the definitive version to play. Alright guys, so I do believe that's all I got for you, but let's talk about it down in the comment section below. Questions, comments, concerns, threats. What do you guys think about the games that I showcased? What are some games that you like that are based on major motion pictures? Let's talk about it, and I can track those down if I don't have them, and we can talk about them in the future. If you do like this content, please go ahead and give me a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You'll be glad you did. I do believe that's all I got for you. Lightsaber Samurai out. Peace.